It was my first time yet realizing how to pack all your scuba gear and then carry it into the cave. And this cave, it was only about 500 meters to the first sump or like water passage. But you know, we were rock climbing on ropes, hauling gear up and down ropes.
Off-Gassing, a scuba podcast with host Nick Hogel. The importance of quality training becomes apparent as we move through the levels of this sport. Natural progression is inevitable as we gain proficiency. The unachievable becomes attainable as experience is gained. Welcoming back Jenn Thomson, I get a chance to hear about her progression, her journey through Cave 1, settling into her role with Global Underwater Explorers as Global Project Co-ordinator, her path to becoming an instructor, what is in store for the future, and much more. Please enjoy. Jenn, welcome back to the podcast. How are you doing this morning? We're actually in the same time zone, which is a nice change.
It's so rare, isn't it? I am good. I'm very tired. I am this evening about to get on a flight out of Singapore, so I'm sorry I will miss you, but yes.
All good, all good. We'll just have to arrange some future plans. You are in Southeast Asia. Tell me a little bit about what you've been doing out here.
I came here actually to do some instructor workshops with Gemma, so kind of part of my instructor development. So I came out here and was interning on different classes, and I can explain kind of what I'm talking about, but I'm basically interning on some of the classes that she was running, and then also doing workshops to gain signatures, and I can explain all of that. But then just beforehand, I actually went to Komodo, which was so cool. It was like the furthest east I've ever dived, and the water was, I thought the water was warm. Everyone else was wearing wetsuits, and I was in like a rash guard, thinking this was super warm. But that was amazing. I saw my first manta on scuba, which is super cool, and it was on my 500th dive, which is amazing.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so amazing. So I actually have not been to Komodo. It's been on the bucket list for so long. But tell me a little bit about the diving, the time, what you were doing there. And I know Komodo is really known for its currents. So any currents out there?
I was in the UK for about 2 weeks, which was rare for me, in August. And I was actually messaging Gemma about coming over to Southeast Asia to intern on a few of her classes, because she was running a few recreational level 1 classes, like the GUE open water classes basically. And we were debating on timings, and it didn't quite work out, but she said that she was going for a few days holiday in Komodo. So I basically flew for about 55 hours straight from the UK to Komodo, and met her just for some fun diving. And yes, I was told about the currents. When we went, it was surprisingly not that currenty, but still some of the most current-y dives I have been on. We went, there's a famous one, I think you might have heard of it, called Shotgun. It's basically in a big bowl where it's super calm and all the water is funneled into this channel. So you basically go from about 18 meters to 11, and at the same time you have to turn around 180 degrees and hang on to this rock, and the current is like pummeling you. So if you let go, you would fly basically, and then you let go and you fly off. But that kind of didn't really happen. We were expecting it to. It wasn't as strong as we were expecting, but it was still beautiful. Some of the most gorgeous coral coverage I've seen, and so many turtles. On one dive, there was like this loggerhead. I've never seen a loggerhead turtle before. That was amazing to see. I've seen green and hawksbill turtles, and this loggerhead literally came right on top of me, so I had to get super low and then turn around, and he passed right over, so it was super nice. Gemma has it all on camera.
That's awesome. So was that your first dives in Southeast Asia?
So I came here last year. So when I finished the scholarship last year, there was a conference in High Springs in Florida. And then me and Gemma actually traveled from there to Bali for a few days. And that was the first time I'd been in this part of Southeast Asia. But then this time I've spent a longer time here, which is very nice. So actually, speaking of currents, the most currenty dive I've experienced now, I think, is actually in Singapore itself. I was diving. No, I'm not joking. There's the dive site Hantu. I was back kicking basically into the current for about 2 hours on Sunday. And it was quite strong, and I couldn't hold my position.
So that's funny because I've wanted to go and check that site out, that area, just because I'm like, oh, it'd be kind of cool just to go do a dive in Singapore. And I know a lot of people, I know Gemma's always going there. And I was like, man, it'd be kind of cool, which everyone's always like, really? This is where you want to go? But I think it would be a lot of fun.
It is. And actually, so I can see how it's very useful for like divers to experience those kind of conditions, because to me, that was some of the lowest visibility I've been in. So it was very interesting for me to experience that. So I've dove in Hantu twice. Hantu is one of the local dive sites in Singapore, and it's by all the massive ships. And so the visibility is fun, let's say. So the first time I went, it was actually on Gemma's birthday, which is very nice.
Oh, okay.
That was on September the 8th, yeah. And so we went down, and there was hardly any current and about 4 meters of visibility. And so that was amazing conditions for Hantu. We saw a few cuttlefish, we saw turtles, we saw nudibranchs. So it was a really nice dive site. We were down there for 2 hours. I was in a single tank, so I was fine. My SCR is like 6. So the rate you breathe, mine's quite low. But
very low.
Very, very low. But incidentally, it basically doubled, which is still low, but it doubled for me the week after when I was back kicking into current.
Oh, yeah. I guess that would make sense.
Just slightly. I was also not stressed, but I was thinking hard because, so context, the reason why I was back kicking into current is because as part of my instructor process, Gemma was running a fundamentals tech upgrade. And so I guess we can talk about this, but as part of the instructor teaching process, part of the ways that you gain experience and tick certain boxes to check that you're ready is to intern on classes. So go help out on classes. Not teach the entire thing, but not just watching. So it's like one step above observational internships. And so I was going to lead the dive for the tech upgrade. And so that meant positioning myself in kind of the worst position. And so the student had to frog kick to come to me, and I had to back kick to stay on the line. And the current was very strong. So at least I tried.
So how is the whole instructor process coming along? I'm assuming, were you able to come out here and shadow and take part in a bunch of classes? Or you said that there was some scheduling didn't work out. So was it a good overall trip to achieve what you wanted to achieve?
Yeah, it really was, and I learned so much from being here. So I guess, like, for context, how a GUE instructor comes about is a quite long process, but I really like it because for me, coming in without any prior instructor or even DMing experience from any other agency, it's really good because what I lack is not really what can be taught, but those experience in seeing different problems and solutions that one can help or aid students. First of all, you need to decide what type of instructor you want to be. So for an entry-level diver, so there's no crossovers as well, I should say that. Everyone has to start by doing either Rec 1 or fundamentals as an instructor. And so you come in and you have to have certain diving prerequisites to come into that. So you have to do a fitness test. So GUE has a fitness test for every level, and it's increased a bit for the instructor process. You do a fitness test, and you have to sign certain forms and liabilities. I want to do Rec 1 instructing, which is open water, not necessarily fundamentals. So my prerequisites for entry is lower than the fundamentals instructor candidates. So for every level of class you want to teach, your personal diving level has to be one above that. So for example, if you want to teach fundamentals, you have to be a Tech 1 diver. For me, wanting to teach Rec 1, I only have to have a tech pass, which I got, if you listen to the last episode, in Durham in February. So yeah, either a tech upgrade or be at a technical pass level in your skills. So I've got that. So you sign up, then you do an observational internship in the class that you are looking to teach. So again, we can talk about this, but I observed Gemma teaching my twin sister how to dive on her Rec 1 course in Sardinia in June, which is amazing. So we do that, and then you get signatures. And so basically there's a whole list of things that you need to cover. Everything from how to lecture, how you demonstrate field drills, how you can teach certain skills underwater, and there's a whole checklist, and your personal diving skills. So as you go along, you can either join instructor training courses, you can do like virtual, so you can have a Zoom meeting with an instructor who is qualified to give signatures, give a lecture, and they can then sign you off, or you go to other courses around the world and then help teach, and then they can sign you off then. So that's kind of the whole process, and once you get all those signatures, your final exam is you organising and teaching that course you want to do. And then you get signed off, and then you become an instructor. So it's a long process, but well worth it. For me, I would like Gemma to be my final examiner and sign me off because she is the recreational administrator for GUE. So this time I spent with her now, it wasn't so much about getting signatures because I can't get her to sign off signatures and then have her do my final exam. It'll be biased in that sense, or we try to minimize biases and by getting a wide range of different signatures from different people. So this was all about just getting up my experience, seeing different courses, a variety of courses, and yeah, so I've had a very, very good time and I've learned a lot for sure.
What are some of the courses that you were able to participate in?
So I participated in one of her fundamentals, which was in Bali, which is really cool to see. And for that, it was interesting to see her approach to teaching, kind of giving people like macro level advice and then micro level advice, because the two students were at very different levels. So for example, one of them previously knew all about, let's say, the long hose and wing setup, and the other student was straight out of a different agency's open water, so needed refining work on more stability. So it was very interesting to see how she handled that. I then did I looked at a few tech upgrades and fundamentals upgrades, and also some of the new courses that are potentially happening within GUE, I looked at them, which I don't know if I'm allowed to say or not. So.
Okay.
But yeah, so let's just say there are some other beta courses which are coming online, and I got to see a few of them as well.
I just have a quick question. So seeing that transition from the person going from the open water industry type standard coming into a GUE, have you seen that quite a bit? And what do you usually normally see? Is it something that is received very well? I'm assuming if they're in a GUE course, they're knowing what they're getting into, quote unquote. But like, how was the transition for that diver?
Oh, interesting. Quite hard, I would say, but I think it depends on the person as well. So I know, for example, in terms of my journey, I really struggled because I came into GUE with about 150 dives, and so I had to, and I still am, actively unlearning all the things that I learned first. It's the theory of primacy. Whatever you learn first is what you will always revert to. And so I find it quite hard. For him, it was a mixture of, he had very little dives, and so yes, his first initial experience of diving was in a different style, and maybe the trim and buoyancy wasn't there, but equally it was about getting used to being in water and that confidence as well. I don't know what we did, but we were trying all sorts of different techniques to try and help this diver, and then from the third to the fourth day there was a switch, and it was amazing. So it was really cool to see. And it also makes me a bit frustrated because also I've seen the other end of the spectrum where Gemma's taken, or other instructors have taken fresh divers, and in the space of 1 or 2 dives they honestly looked like me at like 200 dives, and it's crazy to actually see what you learn first is really what you can do best, which is amazing. And I saw that actually with my twin. So when I observed her recreational one course, which is GUE's open water course. And so on her first day, what she did is, because she had never even been snorkeling before. So actually this is something that GUE does anyway in their recreational level 1 course, but they have 3 confined sessions on day 1, or well, however the plan works. But the first session is just skin diving, so just working with the snorkel and getting water confident. And then they go through trim, buoyancy and kicks, again, just with a snorkel or fins and things like that. And then they get the gear on, then they practice. And so their first idea about trim and buoyancy and body position is in the water itself. And so they go down, and then on her second dive, I said her trim was better than mine at one point. I was like, what the heck? Because that's all they knew. And so any overcompensation or body tension problems she never had. And I remember this distinctly. I came up and Gemma looked at me and said, are you okay? And I said, I'm frustrated. And she said, I know you are. Because I just witnessed what one day can do to a diver, and it was amazing. So it makes me super frustrated at some of the training that can be out there, but also motivated to become a Rec 1 and help teach other people as soon as possible.
I remember my first time going into not the fundamentals course, but in a previous course, just kind of learning more about buoyancy, trim, propulsion. I found it incredibly hard. I had a very hard time with it. You learn a certain way, like you're saying, and then you have to break all these habits that I've basically ingrained over, I can't even remember how many dives at that point. I do find it interesting to kind of see that when someone starts out in a different path, that it comes easier to them because they're not learning I don't want to say the wrong way. I hate saying that, but basically learning the different, we'll call it different way.
Yeah. No, of course. And so I know lots of other training pathways that, they're all just different. And so, but I found that the transition for me was very hard. And even another example, yesterday I have an ear infection at the moment, so I'm out of diving for a week. But I was watching on the surface Gemma teaching this exact process again to her Rec 1 students. And I swear that student just yeeted back kick right the way across the pool with so much ease. And we all just stared at her like, how the heck? It was amazing. But that's what I really like about this instructor process, because it took me a year to back kick efficiently. And still, evidently, I'm unable to do it back kicking against the current for a long period of time. But it's about understanding the motions of the kick and how it's meant to feel. And by listening to Gemma and other individuals teach those ways, it really actually ingrains in myself how it's meant to feel. And so by learning how to teach, you become so much more aware of your own propulsion methods, and you can refine it even more, which is actually very, very interesting. And I find being able to explain it really reinforces your own learning as well, which I like.
Completely agree. I mean, they always say if you want to learn something, you should try to teach it. Or if you want to learn something really well, you should try to teach it, because it's
simply impossible. Yeah.
So your sister just became certified. Was what brought that up? So she'd never even been snorkeling. Was this something that she wanted to try? Were you kind of like, hey, you should get into this? Was there some motivation there, or how did that all come about?
A mixture of both. So I was planning to go to Sardinia for about 6 weeks to 2 months-ish in summer, because I was about to do my K1 course. And I knew that Gemma was there, and she was also planning to run some classes. So I said, why don't the two of you do a course together, and then I can intern. So it's a win-win situation. And also she was very much interested. And I said, if you were to learn, you should learn with this individual and then come here, and it will be easier logistically. So it all worked out, and she was always wanting to, I guess, get more involved, because she's always been very interested in what I've been doing. So she really enjoyed it. Apart from taking off her mask, she didn't like that. But apart from that, it was all good. But nobody does, so it's okay. I definitely didn't when I first started.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. And then I mean, I'm just teasing, but I'm like, and then at that point was Gemma like, okay, we're gonna do this 25 times in a row,
I
just
mean,
to
yeah.
get.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's the best way to do it, though, right? Because
Yeah, of
then
course.
once you get past it, then it's like, because I was actually just talking to Becca about that the other day. I was like, yeah, remember the first time you took your mask off, you absolutely hated it, you were terrified of it. Now, like, she'll just rip that thing right off. It's not even a second thought. It's all part of the learning process. So was she involved in a lot of like water sports or anything, or was this kind of just like okay, let's just try this out. I'm gonna, on the advice of my sister, I'm gonna go and train, take the course. And does she like it to the point where do you think she'll keep pursuing it?
So, same as me in the fact that she never really did water sports before this. I mean, so we both swam, but instantly both of our main sport of choice growing up was actually rock climbing, which was super useful because I ended up doing an SRT course before going to Sardinia, and I'm involved in some caving stuff now. So that's come a nice full circle moment. But no, she was literally just interested and has always been seeing my pictures and videos and wanted to get a taste of what it was like. And I'm trying to take her to Egypt because the UK is a bit cold right now. She didn't learn in dry suit, she learned in a wetsuit. And so I want to definitely take her to other places and make sure she doesn't lapse her certification. Yeah, keep getting her dives up, which would be really nice for the both of us. So it was super cool. Apparently, as well, like people couldn't tell which one was which. I mean, people could tell because I was wearing dry suit, but then at certain points underwater, if you look at the both of us, they had to. Which one's okay? This one has the yellow mask. Okay, this is Jen. So it was very good, and it was very nice. So around Sardinia, where I was, is more known for the caves there, but around the caves actually it was very nice to play with. So very calm waters, nice and blue. There were some shoals of fish and seagrass areas where she could get excited by, and lots of rocks to peer in and try and find things. So she really liked it.
So, speaking of overhead, caves, dry and not dry,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit. Well, I have just so many questions because I actually just came back from my first dry caving trip. Absolutely phenomenal.
So cool.
It just sucks because I feel like I'm just picking up all these. I don't want to say expensive hobbies because dry caving, I feel like, well, I guess I don't really know. I'm so new to it. But either way, tell me about your Cave 1 course.
Oh my god, I'm now hooked. Oh my goodness. I was a bit scared. I'm not going to lie. I was a bit scared. I thought it was definitely at the level of my, I guess, mental capacity at the start of the course. And so I didn't know how much I was going to really like it. But honestly, I am now hooked and I loved it so much. I found the course, it was very strange. It was 6 days, but in that it felt like we progressed so much, but we didn't feel like we were progressing day by day. But when you look at the end, we realized how far we'd come, and it was incredible. It was also interesting to note that, the instructors are really good at looking after people's worries. So we started the course with actually 3 people, and we ended with 2. And I would say it was very, very brave and the right decision of our third teammate to pull out and recognize that they weren't mentally ready for the caves. And so that was actually a really good thing to witness the instructor handling. And so it was actually, I was very proud of that person that decided that it wasn't for them at that moment. So that was on day 2. But yeah, day 1, it was skill check dive. And then literally the only objective was to go in and see what it was like. And I was a bit scared at first, not gonna lie. And then I remember this because I did it with Andrea, so Mara, and he said to me, "Why are all your kicks modified?" And I said, "I don't want to hit the cave." And he said, "I know you're like big in quotation marks, but the cave is bigger." So I was like, "Okay, cool, okay." I was so scared of like hitting anything, but then the caves are big, and the training caves as well that we went into spaces which were able to fit multiple people side by side. So GUE has very strict Cave 1 or new cave guidelines in terms of the level and the depth of restrictions you're allowed to go into and gas rules and things. So everything was super safe. And yeah, I actually really loved it. The drills were really fun, and it just shows like how far I've come as well, because I'm definitely the most confident and stable in doubles and dry suits. I was able to do all the valve failures that we were doing with relative ease. And I then, speaking of mask skills as well, so what we did was we always built up all the skills in open water before going in the cave environment. So we did field drills, then we did in water, and then we did in cave. So at one point he laid a square on the bottom of the ocean in like the confined area in Sardinia, and we went around and we practiced touch contact using the line, how to run drills where you are gas sharing in a no visibility situation. And I remember thinking, I just took off my mask and was, going round in circles. Like, this is a far cry of when I used to be scared to just take it off for 1 second. So it was really cool in seeing how far I've come. And yeah, the caves are very beautiful. And I think it's the first time I've heard an instructor say you must go vertical, because it's not just about horizontal trim, it's actually flat trim relative to the environment. And if you were in a cave which acts like a roller coaster and goes vertical, you will have to do that. So it was very fun indeed. And yeah, I finished the course, was very proud. And then I think actually my first cave one dive after that, I was with a camera set up doing photogrammetry, full swing into projects. So it was a jump, but it was very good.
The one thing that I have heard, I haven't experienced it myself, I'm hoping to at some point, is that the way that the GUE system is, you get your fundamentals, you get your tech pass, and then I think the route then would either be a tech one or a cave one, but the tech pass kind of sets you up to be able to go in either direction.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming from what you just said that they prep you and the protocols are the same, that when you go into that cave one, you already have that really good foundation. So when you start to build upon that, it's not the most difficult thing in the world. It's not basically like, I'm trying to compare it like some, I don't want to say agencies, but I guess say some shops, they'll have a cavern course that's 1 or 2 days, right? And some other shops will have a cavern course that's like 5 or 6 days, and they're like, okay, well, this is the first class, so you're learning how to progress from here. How did you feel that was? Did you feel that you were completely prepped going into it? Was there anything that you felt like you could have practiced more before going into the Cave 1 course?
So I would say, yes, in the fact that the tech upgrade does prep you for that environment in terms of, you have to reach a certain standard within trim and buoyancy limits. And, with the tech pass, you have to be working with canister lights and doubles. So that is good. I know my buddies, so actually, yes, my buddy did not do Tech 1 before as well, but I know some people do Tech 1 before Cave 1. But for me, it didn't matter because, so in the fundamentals, you learn the doubles valve drill, and that's really, showing you how to manipulate valves and things, but it's not talking about the failures. So Tech 1 and Cave 1 brings it to the next level where, they get like this bubble gun out and you have to see, is it behind the first stage or is it in front of the first stage? And is it, fixable, non-fixable, and where it is. So I thought that actually I would be at a disadvantage not doing Tech 1 because I did not know that before. But actually it was fine because they run you through it. And so instantly I ended up being a buddy on a second Cave 1 course at the very end of my stay. And that student had done tech before, but still drift is a thing. They might not have done it in a while. So running through that process again really helped. And you do numerous practices in the cave of all of that. So I didn't find that hard to grasp. I mean, the very first time we ran through the field drill, there was a lot to remember, but then you do it so many times in the cave that it comes second nature in dealing with the types of problems that you have, which is very cool. And it also, because I did recreational level 2 in GUE as well, I knew how to operate the spools and reels before. So I'd already done things, for example, like the primaries and secondary tie-offs, which was interesting because that I felt really helped me, because I found holding the reel, like they're really big. I have small hands and it's really big. And so sometimes I remember when learning in Rec 2, I felt like I didn't have a good enough hand placement. I felt a bit unstable, or the line wasn't as tight, or I wasn't putting good placements down. But then with that initial practice, I found it a lot easier in cave. So surprisingly, like my recreational level 2 stuff really helped as well.
The real work, the line work, definitely, I feel that is something that I need to continually work on. And what's kind of, it's not sad, I guess it's just, maybe it's more of a common thing, is that you hear quite a bit that, once people get out of class and then they just start doing a lot of guided dives, they don't really practice any line or real work. So it's something that I need to keep pushing and saying, okay, I need to go practice this, because it's not the easiest thing in the world to, like, okay, there's a good tie off point, let me go to the next one.
No, for sure.
But another question I wanted to ask is, so you said beforehand you were nervous, you were a little bit scared. What were some of the reasons that you were nervous and scared, and obviously you surpassed it and you're not scared anymore, but what were some of the reasons that you were nervous going into it?
I guess it was just a feeling of, maybe quite unfounded, but what if I lose control of my buoyancy somehow because there's something above me and I shoot up and get stuck on the surface, or that sort of thing, or if I crash into the side and something happens if I get stuck somewhere. But you really don't. It's okay. And besides, the caves that we train in as well, they are big enough for 2 people to fit in. And then we are allowed to go into, so they define restrictions, and for cave 1, you might have to double check if I'm saying this correctly, but basically you're allowed to go in a restriction which is less than 3 meters. So in terms of other advanced cave courses that GUE offers, they do go into more restrictive environments, but with cave 1, it's not. And if you do go into somewhere where you can't basically go side by side, so restrictive as in you have to go single file, it's a meter or 2, if that, so it's all good.
So is there a cave 2 in your future?
Oh my goodness. So I don't know. People have actually said that, and I actually did so many cave project dives in Sardinia that week, that people were saying, how many dives have you done now? Are you hitting like 25 or more? But not yet, at least not for a long time. Besides, I think for cave 2, I would have to have the technical experience, because cave 2 you have to handle stages and I haven't got that, so you would have to do more technical work, which I have not done yet. And I'm okay at this level. So I guess my only not frustrating, but in terms of GUE cave 1, for the penetration or navigation, we're allowed to do 1T. So we're allowed to meet a junction and go on it. And then when we hit a second junction, we are not allowed to go past the second junction. So we do 1T only. And so I have the gas consumption to probably get to the second T in some of the caves in Sardinia. Obviously not go on it, but reach that point and turn around. But I have not been able to yet with other cave 1 people. So that would be quite cool. So I haven't reached like that limit yet. I've never had to call the dive on gas myself. So there's still more I can do. So yeah, I said this is the first dive after my cave 1. I was, carrying this GoPro rig, going down these little like twisty-turny holes in this cave, taking photographs, quite task-loaded. And so for me, it's about just gaining more experience, and more experience in other types of caves first. So yeah, maybe I have to go to Florida or Mexico or Indonesia or somewhere.
Indonesia is absolutely beautiful, as well as Mexico. But so it's funny, because not even from our first interview, but I'm assuming from your first coming into GUE, you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to just be more of the recreational side. Now here you are, cave 1. Do you think that you will eventually go into tech 1?
Oh my goodness. Do you know how many people have asked me that?
It's a natural progression,
I said usually I would never, but now the never has decreased slightly. Maybe it's a maybe, I don't know.
It's chipping away.
It's chipping away. So yes, I think I've had about 6 different instructors ask me. So yeah, I did say at the very start, I am not interested, because at the time I thought it's way out of my capacity to do so. And I guess now I still think it's something I wouldn't be rushing to do, but not gonna lie, I've been thinking more about it. Not because I want to go to those depths. I mean, so okay, for context, the caves in Sardinia, which I went to, one of them is like average depth of 3 meters. I mean, so recreational depths is great.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's not really to go deep or anything like that. It's, for example, for Cave 2, you might need, you handle stages, and so I have no experience of that. And also it would be, if I was ever wanting to do fundamental instructing, I would have to have that as well. So it's not a case of I want to do it for personal reasons. It would be to better myself as an instructor and also as a tool to reach other, for example, cave courses. So it is a maybe. Oh goodness.
That's funny. I feel like I'll have we'll meet up again for a fourth interview, and then you'll have already done your tech one.
It was quite, I mean, so my heart is always, fish at 3 meters. Actually, it's very strange. So when I was in Komodo, I dove single tank, and actually I dove in a wetsuit. I dove wet for the first time this year, and it made me realize how, I got very comfortable diving in my, I guess, the technical dry suit double setup, and it's really important to be very comfortable in being able to switch and being able to switch efficiently, because, I've gotten so used to the availability of lift in my dry suit, which is a bit big anyway, that I was like, why can't I keep my legs up? And so I had to then, a few dives, and then I figured out, the best leg and body tension position again. But it's actually super important, and I believe that, regardless of your level, always coming back to even like the foundational version of equipment in the modular sense is very, very useful, because it just helps you be more well-rounded.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Well, also going back to the Tech 1 comment. So in August, I was also helping out on a project. It was a very deep diving project. So there's a bunch of guys in Sicily, led by Mario Arena, and they were going to about 80 or 90 meters doing some underwater archaeology survey work. And of course, I am not qualified, so I basically went along as a representative of Halcyon and GUE to gather media, but also just help out on the boat as support, surface support, anything like that. Just so it's like you can get involved in projects at whatever level. I just asked if I can come and help. So, and I got to also help out the archaeologists set up their lab and things. So amazing experience. And I carried Mario's CCR for the first time because I wanted to see how heavy it was. And then the amount of comments, like basically it was like a CCR and then my legs. It was very big, very heavy. And I could only go horizontal. I could not go down or up steps in it. But that's okay, we work on that. In terms of fitness, I need to get stronger. But the comments I got was, you need Tech 1 before you do that. And I know. But yeah, that was a super cool experience as well. But yes, the Tech 1 comments have been increasingly frequent. But equally, I like helping out on projects where I'm not qualified to dive, because, it makes me, I guess, more well-rounded. I like helping in other capacities as well. So it was fun regardless.
Speaking of projects, I'd love to hear a little bit more about, so you were helping out in a cave project. You said quite a few cave projects, but before, and this might lead into it, just because I'm curious, and we were kind of chatting on the phone yesterday about it. So the projects that you were helping on, and dry caving, SRT training, single rope technique training is obviously something that you need training for. Can you tell me a little bit about SRT training, what you're doing there, and then what you were using SRT for in the projects that you were helping out on? Or were you using SRT training, I'm assuming?
So we weren't using SRT in the projects that I was doing, but it was very useful in the fact for me to start getting used to the gear, because in the future, I think we will build up to that. So it was only like, the projects that I was on was kind of like my first foray into dry caving and cave diving, essentially. I wasn't cave diving in one of the projects. So I finished Cave 1, and then I was involved in several projects in Sardinia, working in the NGO Phreatic. And they do lots of different projects on groundwater research, photogrammetry. They work with different individuals to ascertain where the flow is coming in the caves, because they want to find new leads for different passages of water to protect them, because water scarcity is a real thing in Sardinia, especially in the summer with tourism and climate change, global warming, everything. They're also doing a lot of work with sediment sample and biospeleology, so basically finding cave bugs as well, which is cool. So I was involved in different projects for different things. So one of the first ones I was doing was, I think I said yes, so first dive after cave 1, and that was a photogrammetry project. So the idea of this is to document and take loads and loads of photos of this certain cave in order to create like a virtual reality or virtual walkthrough that anybody can log in and, you know, go through the cave itself. And that was cool because as a cave 1 diver, my limits on, you know, gas and hence the time was shorter than some of the others. So for example, we then arranged the project or tasks where the cave 2 divers would go in first, lay markers and start taking photos, and me and my buddy would go in, for example, last, hit our turn pressure, come back, and then I was able to do filming while waiting for the others in some of the dry sections of that cave as well. It's still in scuba gear, but just as in getting photos of the air-water interface and those very shallow sections, and also air pockets as well. So that was actually super cool. So no SRT training for that. And I guess another thing that I was doing as well was doing cave cartography. And so again, the cave 2 guys were going in further, deeper, and doing more rigorous surveys. But I was just tasked with drawing little profiles or points of interest. And so we get like a slice of the cave, and so I would draw the different sections and realize I was very bad at estimating distances. This is 4 meters. It wasn't 4 meters. It was like maybe 8. So I was going along and measuring and drawing different things. And again, that was quite close to the cave entrance because of our gas limits and how much we could penetrate in. So then those were, I guess, some of the in-water sections. And then another project I was involved in was a project in a cave called Locoli, and that was the whole cave bug situation. So we were collaborating with some scientists, and the divers would go in, and, you know, it was a very rigorous setup. You know, there were DPVs, there was side mount, they had stages, and they would go in and collect different samples, set traps for bugs, and collect water samples for environmental DNA sampling as well. So I was involved in this project, and I was purely support. So I was literally just carrying and waiting on the surface, because obviously I'm very, very not qualified to dive in this sort of situation. And for this, it was my first time yet realizing how to pack all your scuba gear and then carry it into the cave. And this cave, it was only about 500 meters to the first sump or like water passage. But, you know, we were rock climbing on ropes, hauling gear up and down ropes. And, you know, we were, you know, wearing those helmets and gear. We were swimming across little lakes, hauling the gear across. And it was very, very physically intense. Actually, one of the most intense weekends or few days that I've probably ever done. Realized that if so I can carry an aluminium tank across. But I sink. Generally, I sink in water. I'm not buoyant, okay? And so carrying a steel tank, I can't do, basically. I can't carry a steel tank and swim across with water because I will sink. So I was like rock climbing, and then we were making like a pulley system as well to ferry some scientific gear across different places. So it was very, very unusual. And I guess where SRT comes in is that I wanted to be more aware of the types of rigging, knots and ropes that individuals use when diving in cave systems which are wet, and also when cave diving and needing to ferry stuff across. So I actually did SRT training, a basic 2-day course in the Yorkshire Dales just before I went to Sardinia. And that was talking about the setup, how to ascend and descend on a single rope or line, how to do basic rescues on a line, how to rig up and tie knots to things to bring things up and down the line, and how to use, basically you have these cowtails and how to get over different carabiners and how to join up 2 ropes together and all these types of things. So that was super useful. And then we went down into the systems of caves there, and then went up and down a few waterfalls. For me, it was interesting to do because I said before, so my previous sport of choice was rock climbing, and I was always trying to rock climb, and I wasn't trusting the rope. I needed to trust the rope and not try and climb, just like go down the rope. So useful in the fact that I had previous climbing experience, so handling the rope and remembering knots and sequences and using harnesses, good. Actually trusting the rope, I needed to work on because I was always tempted to climb using my hands. And then I really want to, in the future, do their full rigging course. So actually setting up all the ground anchors and things, which I do know how to do from climbing, but not from the SRT course specifically. And so this came in useful during the project in caves because I was able to, for example, know the safe knots to tie. We had bags of tanks. So we were all carrying in, like, each of us had like a single tank on our backs with like a backpack. And at times we were either rock climbing with this on ourselves, or we would tie the bag to the rope and lower it down. And so it was good to already know knots that would not slip and be aware in handling those types of ropes and configurations.
All the rigging that is set up in the caves, is it left there or is it removed when you leave, or is it set up there for a long period of time for future exploration projects?
So I think it would depend on the project. For the one that we were, there wasn't, for example, there was no belay device system, so there wasn't any ropes and harnesses. There were just ropes for climbing, and then we brought in our own. So for example, if we needed to lower gear down, we had systems, and then we could rig it up ourselves.
So my first dry caving was in central Vietnam, which it's
Wow.
funny. Yeah, it's super beautiful caves. The largest, I'm slowly learning all the terminology, so I'm really bad with it. But the biggest cave in the world is in central Vietnam, the Sun Dung, and I probably butchered that name, cave system. We didn't go to that, but we went to, I think, the Tu Lan system, which it's kind of in the same area, I think. Don't quote me on that.
It's okay.
But yeah, caves, it's obviously central Vietnam, very hot, very humid. Slept in the jungle one night. I think I got 3 hours of sleep because it was just pouring buckets of sweat. Absolutely amazing time. It's funny the stuff we'll put ourselves through just for our hobbies. But what are the environments like in the caves in Sardinia? Is it cool? I'm assuming cool. Is it, what's the environment like?
So other people would say cold. So the average temperature in the caves itself we went in was about 14 to 16 degrees at its coldest. It was a bit hotter than that sometimes. There was one cave system called Bel Torrente, which was, about 14 degrees. And everyone was not shocked. I mean, slightly
Is that
shocked.
not cold for you?
Okay, right. So I wore a dry suit, right? Still have my avatar. It's working amazingly well, I would say, because I have the 101 and, 6 weeks cave diving with this dry suit, and it's been okay, touch wood. And I was just wearing, my avatar undergarments, like a thermal base layer, and no hood or gloves because I get too hot. And then Gemma was wearing a 9mm hood, and I was wearing 0. So she was cold, and everyone else was cold, and I was okay. So yeah, not humid. It was, I would say, 14 to 16. And the only time I really got cold, to be fair, was in the dry caving system. So everyone else was wearing, at the time, when they were about to go diving, they were wearing their dry suits already. So, I remember Gemma putting like knee pads on her dry suit, because when she was climbing up, she was using her knees. And so it was to stop the wear and tear. And for me, I was just wearing leggings and a rash guard because I got so hot transporting the gear in and out, like a more dry heat, I would say. But then there's 2 pools of water you have to go in before getting to the main sump, and that was about 14 degrees. So that in a rash guard was cold. It was like pleasantly cooling, and then I got cold.
Yeah.
But apart from that, it's relatively okay temperature-wise, I would say. But I am not the best one to ask about temperature and climates. I have discovered that as well.
So you're just wearing the dry suits for the water passages, or to pass water? Like, why are you wearing the dry suits in the caves? Is it just for protection? Is it because you're traversing water to get to the end destination?
Oh, yeah, so they were wearing their dry suits. So I think what we did was we got into the cave, and then when we got in, the individuals that were wearing dry suits, they then changed into the dry suit, purely because, yes, so if they were crossing pools in order to get to the first sump, there would be no point in them wearing wet, and then they would have to put on a dry suit with wet clothes, and that would just be not nice. So the ones that were diving always wore the dry suits, like when they got into the caves, just because of that reason. And then it was easier in one section to change because, you know, when you're there, it's just full of, I guess, giant boulders, so it's quite hard to change and things like that. So it was purely for like ease of logistics, I would say.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be a good. I don't know if I've seen a sales pitch for dry suits on that. It's like, oh, we can handle 6 weeks of caving and still dive and be dry. A great marketing tool. But how is the new, well, it's not new role anymore, I should say, but I think it was new-ish when I spoke to you last time. So how is that going, and what have you been doing?
Oh, it's been going good. I mean, hopefully. No, yeah, so I started with GUE kind of like a part-time role, but the amount of diving and things I've been doing, it has been more or less full-time until now. So my role comprises, I guess, 3 elements. And then part of my role as well is I want to, you know, use my platform and then help create a network for GUE instructing. So I guess GUE instructing is like a side quest, but the main quest is, so I am running a GUE project. So at the moment I am their project coordinator. And while this means, you know, I am not, for example, people like who are running Phreatic or Mario Arena, like all these other people that I was talking about, I help with the engagement and facilitation of projects. What that looks like is I am helping create resources on the GUE website. I'm helping maintain reports. For any new projects that are up and coming, I help the design and implementation in those projects, helping gain grants and other forms of resources as well, and then also help out on the projects as I can on, for example, in support and other things where people need. So it's a mixture of like implementation projects as well as actually doing the projects as well. I am also, like within that, there's a few more resources and curriculums and different types of initiatives which are going to come out in the future, which I'm actively working on as well. So it's very exciting and I really love it because I can see like what a difference it makes, especially younger divers who want to get started into goal-orientated diving and they don't know where to start. So it's been good feedback so far. And then, yeah, I'm also helping out Project Baseline. So getting that almost revamped in terms of their engagement and maybe, you know, connecting with GUE again a bit more because they have had synergy, but we want to make that synergy even greater. And then finally, I actually am now running the scholarship program. So that's been super cool. So it's been amazing to see everyone's applications. And so I guess this will go out later, but in real time, we have the GUE's Community Day, which is happening in 2 days' time, and I am presenting about the projects that we're doing, the initiatives that GUE is running, and also introducing the next Gen Scholar as well. So it's been a very crazy week with all the diving and work behind the scenes, but it's very good. I like it a lot.
Cool. And that's like tomorrow, or that's like really soon, right? The GUE community.
So I guess this is not going to go out in 2 days' time.
Yeah.
For context,
yeah.
So the community day is typically every 2 years, and so that is usually in September. It's like the 3rd Saturday of each September or something. So yeah, it's on the 21st of September. So then the alternate year, so every other year, will be the GUE conference. So they alternate really between conferences and virtual community days.
Yeah, I just saw a post about because they're doing a live, or is it a live webinar, right? Yeah.
Live stream, yeah, tune in, I'm going to be on it. But yes, we're doing a live stream and different speakers talking about projects or different communities have sent in videos, and then I will introduce the scholar and the scholarship program, and people can tune in and ask questions and things like that. So yeah, it should be good.
Last couple of questions for you before I let you go. So as far as I know, we spoke a little bit about the instructor path. Do you have a timeline, or is it just going to kind of be, as things happen, or is there a timeline that you're trying to reach to get to the instructor?
I have a timeline, or Gemma has a timeline and dates. Don't know how much I could say.
Okay.
But yes, so hopefully in more or less like a year's time or just less than a year. So we're aiming for summer, fingers crossed.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I very much look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, so that would be, like a Rec 1 course. And so my plan is to finish off my signature collection and then do that. So, shout out if anyone's instructing. I'm a Rec 1. No, it should be good. So I plan to try to finish off gaining experience and internships and then go into my final exam. So hopefully within like a year or so.
And then my last question for you, for someone that wants to go into a Cave 1 course because you had some nerves going into it, what is the best piece of advice that you could give to that person that is about to conquer the overhead environment?
Well, I could say what Mara said to me. I know you're big, but the cave's bigger. Like, it's okay. You're not going to crash or get stuck. Like, it's okay. The training is such that, they won't take you into these uber restrictive environments. I would say, the best thing you can do is just be as calm as possible because, when you are in that relaxed state, you are not going to suddenly lose control of your buoyancy just because, if you can go through a swim through, you can go through a longer swim through, as in a cave. But I would just say calm and don't feel like overwhelmed about, the magnitude of rock which is above you or something. It's literally, think of it as a slightly smaller open water. That's what I was thinking about, like a slightly smaller open water space. And some of the caves we went in, physically, like I could not see the other side. So it did feel very nice. I was also a bit scared about not scared, but it felt a bit daunting to do any of the, the lost line procedures or or visibility procedures. But I actually in the end found it super calming because you again, like the GUI way to do it, you practice field drills, you practice in open water, then you practice in the cave, and so you already know the steps. All you need to do is just keep calm, and I found it very relaxing because they simulate no visibility with blindfolds that go over your mask, and you always have touch contact as well, and so I found it super calming actually. And so just feeling the line as you move along it. When you don't have your eyes, your breathing, I found, becomes super calm, and you have all these heightened senses and awareness, and it just felt a bit more natural, to be honest. It's a very weird way to explain it, but it just felt, like almost calming as well. It's very unusual, but in terms of actual actionable advice rather than just it's calming, Rec 2, I found it very useful because I knew about the spools and reels beforehand as well. And people don't realize like Rec 2 would be, it's all the navigation primer, you have line work in there. And so that was useful in knowing what to do.
I was trying to take the Rec 2 course this year, which I don't think is going to happen, but for next year, right? Always something to look forward to. But speaking of looking forward, I look forward to the next time we get to chat. I hope, yes, thank you very much for coming back to the podcast, and I hope you a safe journey, because you said you're leaving later today. You're flying back to the UK?
I'm flying a very convoluted way, but I'm flying to Cyprus, but I have a day's layover in Dubai and London because I have some visa stuff, and I needed time out of an airport to run and do the live stream of Community Day, then run back into the airport and pick up my dry suit, which is currently being fixed.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. It was wonderful to catch up with you.
It's so good. I promise next time I'm in Asia, we will dive together.
Off-gassing, a scuba podcast.